Well, good afternoon. I think it's 2:03 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to get started. And again, I would like to welcome everyone and thank you all for joining us today for this 1 hour session. We are very excited to have you, and I am personally very excited about this topic. My name is Rebecca Hassan, and I am the Executive Director of Nearshore Executive Alliance. We are delighted to host this webinar with three of our amazing members. The idea for this session came up as we often talk to our provider members in our community and ask them what their greatest challenge is. And what we hear the most of the time is, that their number one challenge is to find new clients and think about the process of identifying the prospects, pitching to them, and then actually converting those leads into customers. So that is the topic for, as you can see on the screen right now, don't let your pitch hit the ditch. How to pitch nearshore services to U.S. clients. Um, um, you know, before we get into the discussion and I introduce to you the people who have made this session and this discussion possible, I would like to share a little bit of background information on Nearshore Executive Alliance, or NEA. NEA is the industry association for the IT services and business process outsourcing sector in Latin America. We are a nonprofit organization founded by a broad selection of industry leaders with the objective of creating awareness of the capabilities of the region and increasing the use of the nearshore delivery model. Um, you know, this webinar in particular is an effort to help our nearshore providers become more competitive, not in the sense of their ability to deliver their services, but in their ability to present themselves and to market themselves. So we have four main objectives for that we are trying to accomplish in the next hour or so. And number one is is how to better understand and manage buyer perceptions. Number two is how to make your sales pitch more relevant and compelling. Three is learn to adapt your techniques to different prospects. And finally, open the door to further conversations. And the people who are going to make this possible, and I'd like to thank them in advance for for all the hard work they've put into organizing this session, are these three NEA members. First is Theresa Rice. She is the CEO of Out Loud Communications Consultants, a public relations and digital communications company overseeing a large portfolio of clients throughout Latin America. She's a specialist in destination promotion, having represented the governments of Costa Rica, Mexico, Uruguay, Houston, and Miami for tourism, investment, and export promotion. She started her career as a journalist in the United States and Latin America, and currently her company supports clients such as Airbus, Spotify, Mozilla, Coursera, and several others. And she has coordinated more than 100 spokesperson and crisis management communication trainings. So I think she's the right person to talk to us about, creating our communication strategy. Thank you, Terry, for being here.
Thank you.
Our buyer today is Brian Brower. Brian is the Vice President of Product Development at Vivint, a company that is focused on building the world's first smart home by developing simple, elegant products and services to help families live life more intelligently. Prior to Vivint, Brian was the Global Program Director in Nike's digital customization organization, leading initiatives such as Fuel Band, running applications, the content management platform powering Nike.com, and Nike Kinect training game for Microsoft Xbox. He has more than 15 years of experience in all areas of technologies and started his career in technology in Mexico, working for Johnson & Johnson, and has led numerous technology engagements in Latin America. And last but not least, we have Mike Barrett, who will be helping us in doing the mock sales pitches and showing us how it's done. And Mike is the CEO and co-founder at Unosquare, an IT services firm that rapidly building software development teams in Mexico helps customers extend their software engineering capabilities and increase speed of development. Unosquare is one, under Mike's leadership, Unosquare has been named one of the 100 fastest growing private companies in Oregon for 2 years in a row, and recently was named to the Inc. 5000 list of fastest growing companies in the U.S. For 2015. He has over 20 years of experience in ground level work in the outsourcing industry. And back in 2011, Mike helped give birth to the Nearshore Executive Alliance. So we are very lucky to have Mike as our vice chairman. So welcome.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone.
And with that, again, thank you, all three of you for making this possible. And I think everyone has heard enough of me for now. And now I'm going to let Theresa take over and walk us through the agenda and the rest of the content.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Rebecca. It's an honor to be participating in this webinar with Mike and with you and with Brian. So we have a lot of ground to cover today. We'll try to speak very quickly and get through it all. Rebecca's already given the introduction about us and about the session. And so the modules are doing your homework and how to ask the right questions to the buyer, seeing things from the buyer's perspective, how to make your sales pitch more effective. And then we're going to have a series of simulations and reviews where the audience will get the chance to listen to an interaction between a provider and a buyer and be able to offer a little bit of feedback on performance based on some of the theory that we're going to learn in the beginning of the session. Next slide. Great. So as Rebecca said, I am a communications executive who's promoted several Latin American countries. And one of the things that I do is train their executives to conduct effective interviews with U.S. media. So when I was having some conversations with Brian about some of the best practices and common mistakes that I cover in those trainings, he told me that a lot of the lessons also apply to pitching nearshore services to U.S. buyers. So I want to start by saying that I know full well that nearshoring is not an easy sale. It's not the same thing as selling a tablet or a tennis shoe. To convince a company to nearshore takes months or years of effort on your part, communicating with very senior executives, and we know that all that effort can't be distilled into a simple sales pitch. But how the communications is handled at the first touch point, be it an event, a one-on-one meeting, a phone call, an email, or an invitation to compete in an RFP, that can really make the difference between opening up a door to further conversations or getting it slammed in your face. Next slide. Next slide, Rebecca.
Sure. Sometimes it slows down, but it should be coming.
No problem. I'll get started. So I think, buyers may have different opinions about what a good pitch technique is, but for me, the most important component comes actually before you pitch, in the time that you spend researching not only the company you're pitching to, but the state of his or her industry, competitors, and even the individual person that you're going to be speaking with. Thanks to the internet, fortunately, conducting this research is easier than ever. What I often do is look at a prospect's profile on LinkedIn and Twitter, which really enable you the greatest access to information without being a friend or a follower. And LinkedIn and Twitter tell you both a lot about the person you're going to be speaking to on both the personal and professional level, particularly some commonalities that you can mention during the conversation to help break the ice. Things like companies you've both worked for, perhaps, professional groups you belong to, the people you both know, the schools you studied with, even the political orientation of the buyer or hobbies, so that you know what topics you might want to mention or avoid. The next part of the research can be about the buyer's owned social media sites and websites, and particularly the press and investor relations news and annual reports. I think you can cull a lot of very interesting information about the buyer from those documents. Wikipedia is also a great place to get a more objective view of the company. And they often dedicate a lot of time to discussing company challenges and controversies. And also, it's a good idea to set up a Google alert about your prospect so that you can get a sense of what some of the media coverage has been about the company. Another place where you can look for buyer information is the financial statements and the other documents that are submitted to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC. Public companies are required to make regular SEC filings, and investors and financial professionals rely on these filings all the time, but what you might not know is that anybody can access and download this information for free. So not all of the SEC filings are available online, but many of them can be found on the SEC's EDGAR database. Another place that you can get some information about a company and industry is through business intelligence sites such as Hoover's, that's a Dun & Bradstreet company, and it has a lot of useful company and competitor information, some of which can be accessed for free. And then as for industry information, I try to consult the websites of trade associations and the government agencies that oversee certain industries so that you can get a sense of what the hot topics and trends are. After you read all these materials, you'll start to get a sense of what the company's strengths and weaknesses are, threats to the industry or by competitors, and most importantly, the opportunities that you can offer as a provider. And then once you've read through all these materials, you can start developing intelligent questions for the buyer, which you should ideally send in advance of any initial conversation so that you can use the answers to craft your pitch and make it much more tailored to your buyer. I know that in school teachers say that any question is intelligent, but I disagree. I think there's nothing worse than asking a buyer a question that can be easily answered on the website, or that could have easily be answered by information that the buyer himself or herself provided to you. So, you know, if you were pitching to Nike and you're asking, so you make clothing as well as footwear, don't you? I would consider that a stupid question. You know, you want to formulate questions that demonstrate that you're trying to get to the heart of the buyer's challenge that you as a provider will try to help solve. And I call these questions the what keeps you awake at night questions. A good example of this type of question would be, employment is pretty low in your state, so how difficult has it been for you to recruit top talent? Or, I've noticed several new and large companies are starting to compete in your space, how are you responding? And Brian, I know that you have a great example from Vivint of a supplier that was great at asking those intelligent questions.
Yeah, sorry, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good, sorry. So in this example, that I think the thing, what I would love, we work in Utah, which isn't necessarily seen nationwide as Silicon Valley, but it's actually the second most invested area in the United States right now in terms of venture capital. And the competition for talented resources is crazy. It's insane to try to find really good developers right now, and especially like developers and engineering talent of all kind. So the type of question that I would love ahead of time is, hey, what are your key challenges? And this would be one of the first things that would come out of my mouth, is just finding people. And to show an understanding of the market that we're dealing with, not just my company, or not even just me as a person that has a role within the company, but what are the key problems that I'm trying to solve. This framework that we talk about is actually a well-known framework. It's called Jobs to be Done, and it really puts yourself in the mind in our scenario here of the buyer, not just who they are, what they like, but what are the specific problems that they are trying to solve right now, and that puts you in a really good frame of mind to know how to angle your pitch.
Great. I think you had told me specifically about a provider that bombarded you with questions that were kind of annoying at first, but
yeah, and the example here, we actually do some manufacturing down in Mexico, and they were bidding against Asia, and Asia was actually pretty quiet. They did the typical fill out an RFP and go through the process, but this one company out of just outside of Guadalajara actually just started bombarding me every day with questions more and more incisive. And it was a little bit annoying, but by the time we sat down with each of the vendors, we had them all come in one day. 3 of the pitches were completely irrelevant, missed the point, and didn't address the problems that we had in front of us. The one vendor from Mexico that had really led with a series of questions leading up to that blew us out of the water because their solutions were very specific to the problems that we were facing.
Great, thanks a lot, Brian. Next slide, Rebecca. Okay, so yes, speaking about the buyer's mind, a dark, scary, and cluttered place. So if you've done your homework and you've done your research on the company, it puts you in an excellent position and an excellent frame of mind to get inside the buyer's thoughts, which is really where you have to be for your pitch to be effective. There's no bigger turnoff for a buyer than a provider who makes the conversation all about him. And another part of making the pitch successful is understanding the person you're speaking with. Ben Duffy, who was one of the pioneers of sales theory, and he actually came from advertising, oddly enough, said, the key to pitching is to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, anticipate the objections the buyer might have about you, ask questions, listen to the answers, and provide the information that's most relevant. So what are some of those objectives that a buyer might have when speaking to a provider? You know, they could be asking themselves, who is this guy? You know, where does he come from? Why should I trust him? Why would I ever want to do business in Latin America? Or I'm happy with things as they are, so why should I change? Or my experience with outsourcing was so negative that why would I ever want to do this all over again? So if you can anticipate some of these questions, you're in a fantastic position to be able to frame some of the answers. And in fact, in the conversation, you might want to even acknowledge those possible questions. For example, you could say, I know that we haven't met, but as someone who worked on the buyer side for many years, I know the challenges that are involved with working with outsourcing to a new provider. Or I noticed from your LinkedIn profile that you went to Yale. My daughter's studying there now. But the most important thing of all is to tailor the pitch specifically to the buyer. A buyer gets turned off immediately when he's getting a pitch that seems like a simple copy and paste of something else instead of a document or a discussion that's tailor-made to them. They want the provider's approach to reflect an understanding, a true understanding of the company's culture. And Brian, you had a great example of that from your time at Nike.
Yeah, when we were looking at different partners, and this was in the brand or advertising space, getting ready for the London Olympics, we had a lot of different vendors come in, and one of them actually brought us running shoes. And I'm sorry, we were in London at the time, in the Nike office there. They brought us running shoes and took us on a run through London. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had, both from just loving running and loving getting outdoors, but just we knew that agency got us, immediately understood our point of view, and it really opened our eyes to where they wanted to go in terms of an engagement.
Great. So next slide, Rebecca. So Brian, you're going to talk to us a little bit about the big idea.
Sure. Yeah, I think one of the most common mistakes, and I'll start from that, is an informational session. I really think from a buyer's perspective, and I've been through a number of these, every time I leave that type of session, even if it's only for a half hour or an hour, I leave frustrated because I'm not sure what to take away from there or why I spent my time doing that. And so those informational sessions for me just don't add a lot of value, and they actually leave a negative impression as a buyer walking away from it. I think if you come in with a really clear understanding of the problems that I'm facing, and then seek to solve those problems with clear solutions, that to me is a very productive session. And the big idea is, I think the key here, it's hard to come unprepared with a great idea. If you haven't done your homework, if you haven't put yourself in the consumer's mind, your ability to nail it on that first introduction or as you're developing your pitch. If it happens, you'll be lucky. Most of the time, and I've been through a few of these sessions where people don't really know us or the problems that we face us and come in with a really strong point of view. It misses the mark. It doesn't resonate with us. So, and the best ideas are ones that open our minds to new opportunities. So when I see a really great pitch, I actually start revving with the potential partner on other opportunities that we might have, and that's when you would know as a salesperson, I've got this guy. Fish on the line type thing is when you see me actually expanding on the opportunity that we're initially talking about. So next slide, Rebecca. You know, the unique value proposition in product development, this is something that we call it a full court press, but it's the one thing that we know we do better than everyone else. And we zero in on that, and before we talk about anything else, we focus on this. And it really helps me as a buyer understand what makes you different. Common mistakes are when people come in and say we do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I've sat through so many of those pitches without understanding what it is the potential provider actually brings, and those are so frustrating to me as a buyer. It actually develops a spirit of distrust. Like, can I really trust these guys? They say they do everything, but do they do any one thing really well? And the other thing that I find that's really common in the nearshore space is selling nearshore, talking about time zones, talking about maybe prices, talking about the countries where they're from. All of that will matter at some point, but not initially. I want to know about your company specifically. And this is especially true as nearshore companies pit themselves against Asia. They actually lead by talking about the advantages of nearshore, which is good. Like I said, at some point we'll have that discussion. Just don't lead with it. I want to give an example of how this was done really well, and I'll go back to the manufacturer out of Mexico. We talked about they were up against 3 huge manufacturers out of Asia. And one of the things that they did was they asked us very specifically, hey, you know, we talked about those series of annoying questions. They asked us about our ability to manage all the parts of the inventory that we put into a product. And they got really specific with us with those challenges. And by the time they came, they showed us that one of their superpowers was the ability to find parts all over the world, do it at a really beneficial price to us, and actually manage the risk of bringing all those parts into Mexico and assembling the product that we were developing. They did it so well that they actually solved 2 of our biggest sourcing issues in the process of bidding for our business. I was blown away by that. We've had 2 parts. We developed a doorbell camera. And there are 2 parts to that camera that are extremely hard to find and are not cost competitive. And they actually reduced our cost by about 35% just as part of bidding for our business. It was amazing. And we left that initial discussion knowing that they absolutely had a superpower that we could take advantage of. So when we talk about unique value proposition, that's what we're talking about.
Great. Next slide. Perfect. So Brian talked a little bit about what he loves to hear as a buyer, but there's plenty of stuff that's often included in these pitches that we don't necessarily want to hear. As he mentioned before, information that's irrelevant to the engagement, slides of logos as if they were trophies without specific information about what the provider has done for these companies. Another common mistake is for providers to focus on characteristics and not benefits. A benefit is a characteristic with an explanation of why that characteristic is relevant to the specific buyer. For example, as Brian mentioned, the fact that your market is in the same time zone as the company is not relevant in and of itself. It's only relevant if a lot of the work that has to be done is collaborative and you want people to be in the same time zone. So in these pitches, just be careful to go beyond characteristics and emphasize the benefits. What are the aspects of your work that are truly relevant to the specific buyer? Another thing that providers tend to mention a lot is they will focus on the country. Selling the country, they'll talk about the quality of life, or they'll talk about friendly people. Maybe they'll talk about testimonials, and as you guys know very well, all of testimonials are positive, but they're also very boring because very often they do not explain what exactly the provider did for the company to help them address their particular business challenge. And unsubstantiated statement, I think that it's one thing for a provider to talk about himself or herself, and it's another thing for you to have third-party information, awards, recognition, statistics. That type of information is much more likely to convince a potential buyer than anything that you will say about yourself. So in this next section, we are going to be skipping to the fun part, which are the simulations. Oh, I'm sorry. First, Brian is going to talk about a little bit more about the stuff that we do want to hear and often don't hear.
Yeah, I do want to hear about the history of your country or your company, or if you're representing a country, I want to hear about it, but I want to hear about it in terms of key milestones that you've achieved. What's important for me is to get to the details of who specifically we'll be working with. My engagements tend to be pretty small, but even in bigger engagements that I've had at Nike, the who, the specific teams, matter more than the company. I've worked with really great companies that gave us pretty poor teams, and I've worked with smaller, unheard of companies that gave us world-class teams. So I want to get to the specific team as quickly as we can. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. They really are. I was reading common mistakes that people are making on their resumes, and there was this old myth to not include your picture. No, we love it. We love to see the people and as quickly as we can get to know who it is we're going to be working side by side with. One of the things that's important to us, and a common mistake that I see, we ask, how do you guys prefer to work? Do you work in Agile? Do you work in Waterfall? Are we going to be talking to you on a daily basis, or do you prefer to check in every month? The mistake I see is people not having a really clear point of view again. The wrong answer is we'll work however you want. The right answer is to be candid and say, hey, we prefer working in Waterfall, and if I work in Agile, I know how to work within that framework. The fact that we use different methodologies won't be a disqualifier. But what's scary to me is when I hear we work in whatever. And then what's most relevant to us? Again, that's the things about your company, your country that really matter to us. Last year, we were down in Guadalajara, and I was thinking about many of the nearshore pitches that I heard, especially at my time at Nike. And I'm walking around this very creative, very artistic culture that has a lot of culture, a lot of colors. It's very vibrant. It's very happy. And I'm wondering, why has no one from South America or Latin America come and pitched to me at Nike that part of their culture? Why haven't they talked to me about the creativity, the music, the dance, the movement that's so vibrant in this part of the culture, and it's so relevant to who we were at Nike? So there are absolutely things that that we want to hear about your country, your company, your culture. Just make sure that it's relevant. One thing that absolutely is a personal pet peeve of mine is when I never get to see any of the products that you work on. That to me is a big red flag. So the more you can show examples of things that you've worked on, even better if I can play with them and use them for myself. That goes a long way. And then again, I love it when companies or countries send me pictures of the people in their office, show us the space itself, invite us down. That matters a lot because that implies a transparency that we're going to have throughout the relationship. So those those things tend to really pique my interest. Cool. I think we're ready to go into scenarios now. So as we walk through these scenarios, I'm going to play the part of a buyer. Mike is going to play the part of a provider who's looking to pitch a service to me as the buyer. For people that are listening online, we'd love it if you would send via the GoToMeeting any questions or feedback that you have of Mike's pitch. After Mike is done, I'll talk briefly about what resonated to me and the parts of his pitch that didn't resonate or didn't stick with me. So, Mike, if you want to walk through this scenario, we can fire it up.
Okay, so the scenario one is laid out on the slide. It's a U.S.-based sportswear company. It could be Adidas, it could be Nike, it could be Brooks running shoes, which has been in the news lately. The culture is also related to the core consumer, related to sports-obsessed athletes. You guys can read the rest there. I won't go through it. So the potential supplier opportunity is really related to creative work, digital work, doing the front-end development, working in conjunction with your group, Brian, and your ad agencies. Am I getting that correct?
Yep.
Okay. You need best-of-breed developers. Could be a blend of, you need best-of-breed developers, whether they're internal employees or contractors. And then your current production systems being supported in India. I think I remember that was SAP being supported by one of the huge Indian companies. Just in my research, I noticed that. And then you need some QA and development to augment your current internal team of employees and contractors. So, Brian, first of all, thanks a lot for taking this meeting. I really appreciate it. Thanks for making the time for me and my company called, what's my company called? Nearshore Professionals. Thank you for letting Nearshore Professionals have this meeting. Brian, first, what I want to say is we've got, our IT services are very broad. We really have everything you could possibly need. We've got .NET people, we've got Java people, we've got Ruby people, we've got all that front-end mobile that you need. JavaScript, Windows. We can do it on Windows Mobile. We can do it on the iPhone. We can do it on. We even do development for BlackBerry, if you can believe that, Brian. We have we actually have a few practice areas too, and I can send you some resumes if that's okay. We've got a mobile development practice leader. I'd like to send you his resume. We have a Salesforce.com practice. I know you never mentioned Salesforce.com, Brian, but we actually have Salesforce.com, and we have a practice leader. A woman, actually, she's very attractive, by the way. I'd like to send you her photograph and her resume. And any questions at this point yet, Brian? If not, I just want to jump right into rates.
You mentioned a little bit of everything. Salesforce.com, just doesn't really apply to what we do.
Okay, just scratch that. Yeah, scratch that. Anyway, I love your company. I'm wearing your shoes right now, and on rates. So we are about $5 to $10 an hour more than India, and I say that because I know you're already using India. So we're a little bit more expensive than India, but everything that we do is in the same time zone. And we all speak English. Everybody in my company speaks English. Some people kind of have rough accents, but that's okay. They're great engineers, and but we're in the same time zone, so we cost a little bit more money, but we're very agile, fully bilingual. Anyway, Brian, thanks for your time. Hey, if you're ready to move forward, can you send me your requirements and your job descriptions, and I can go ahead and just start sending you people.
Yeah, let me get back to you. I'm sitting here and I'm scratching out on a piece of paper what didn't resonate and what resonated. And it's like Mike did not even listen to what Theresa and I were talking about for the past 30 minutes. Actually, the things that didn't resonate were he asked some really high-level questions about our perspective, and then jumped right into what their company was all about. He made the classic mistake of we can do everything, all the way up from Salesforce.com and BlackBerry and Windows phones, which, yeah, just absolutely doesn't matter. And then he jumped into rates and time zones. Surprisingly enough, the thing that did resonate was the picture of the attractive woman. No, I'm kidding. Hearing that the developers speak English is important, because I would love for our teams to work side by side with each other and to be able to communicate well. It resonated, but more in the form of a question that he has great engineers. And so at this point, I don't believe him or not believe him. It leaves an impression in terms of a question in my mind. Were there any questions or feedback from the audience as we went through that, Rebecca?
Sure, let me read this one. Mike did not focus on the problem and the solutions that the company could have. He focused on describing what he can do. He did not tell the value proposition for his company, and didn't leave the other person talk.
Yeah. So were there any other comments you wanted to read out loud?
I think no, that's the only one I have in front of me right now.
Great. So we intentionally.
This is Terry to just jump in. There was no big idea. No ideas were discussed.
Yeah, he was on a fishing expedition for sure. We intentionally set up a what not to do in our first scenario, and Mike did the what not to do exceptionally well. Well done, Mike.
My pleasure. Thank you. You want to try again, and I can take what I've learned and try one more time, maybe?
Let's give it one more shot.
All right. Scenario 2. Home automation company. High tech. The people on the call can read through the description of the company. One of the company, it's interesting, the company weakness, a startup transitioning into a high growth company, struggling to implement disciplines and processes. A high growth company is actually a great scenario for us, because for all the people on the call, because its resources, whether it's BPO, call center resources, or ITO, engineering resources, it's a good fit sometimes with a high growth company. Company threats are listed there. Let's talk about the supplier opportunity. Internal organizations are struggling to keep up with growth. I'm going to change this a little bit for the sake of the pitch I'm going to do, and we're going to call this a regulatory environment with a specific need. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust the supplier opportunity so that when I do the pitch, it makes more sense. So the supplier opportunity from in this scenario is really high growth, high need for compliance-related software to manage the growth, and a need for engineers to build and manage that software to accommodate the tough regulations in the industry. Can we start from that point, Brian? Okay, great. So first of all, I'm starting the pitch now. So first of all, Brian, before we jump into the business, my first and most important question is related to your profile on LinkedIn. I noticed it says you speak Spanish. Where'd you pick up Spanish?
My grandmother was a fierce little Basque woman, and I actually studied in the Basque country in Spain.
Wow, that's amazing. How long were you there, and like, how much Spanish do you speak? Would you call yourself fluent?
I used to. I was there for just over, a little over, yeah, a little over 25 or 26 months. It was a great experience. The school there was eye-opening. It was a Catholic university there in Spain, and it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
I've done some work down in Mexico as well. So
Yeah, I actually live in Mexico now. I moved down there a couple of years ago with my family, so I'm trying to learn Spanish. I'm far from fluent, but living there, it's obviously a lot easier to learn. So yeah, that's cool. If you ever come visit us, it'd be fun to practice. See you get some practice in on your Spanish. So Brian, on business, can you first tell me a little bit about your typical customer?
yeah, so we have a sales force that actually they go door to door in the traditional the security market way. If you're familiar with ADT or Comcast.
Oh yeah, sure. Uh-huh.
And the people who are typically most interested in our products are people who are a little bit forward thinking. Home automation hasn't taken off in terms of everybody feels a really compelling need to go get one. It's not like a pair of shoes. But this is people who are thinking about, I'd love to save some energy. I'd love to keep my family safe. I would love to save some money on my bill and make life a little bit easier. Typically high-tech, energy-conscious families. That's what our consumer base is.
Gotcha. Okay, so obviously I already did the research. It's consumer products. You're going the door to door. You're selling them. You've probably got with regards to truth in advertising and the sales process and things like that. So where are you guys investing most of your money without seeing the return right now? Is that happening, or is everything just kind of doing great?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing that is you could, in the market that we're playing in, competitors like Google with Nest, Apple, HomeKit, Amazon just came out with this killer product called the Echo. They're doing some amazing things, and the biggest threat to us is that we can't keep up with these guys in terms of our ability to innovate. So when you ask, are we investing any money that doesn't have a high rate of return? Every minute we spend in development that isn't generating something new or innovative scares the crap out of me, because it means
Gotcha.
getting ahead of us.
Yeah, so Brian, I probably should have told you before, but I listened to the last quarterly investor call that your CEO had with Wall Street. And there was a recording of it, obviously, on the internet for all publicly traded companies. So that was very helpful for me and my team in preparing for this meeting. We heard the same thing from your CEO about needing innovation in the distribution channel, and we also heard about the heavy compliance related issues in the supply chain. So I'm going to just take one of those. I'm not going to try to tackle everything. I just want to pick one that we're good at. There's some things we're not good at. We're not a TCS. We are not a soft tech. We don't have multiple practice areas for every vertical solution out there. But what we are good at is we're very good at building high-end agile teams for consumer products companies like yours. 5 to 10 people, and specifically building compliance-related solutions with innovation. So that's where I want to focus this conversation. So, and to prove it to you. Oh, did you want to say something? Sure.
Yeah. Did you have an example of that?
Yeah. Actually, I was going to share that with you. We did a similar solution for another company, not a direct competitor of yours, but kind of an indirect competitor of yours. And in fact, you can talk to Fred Smith, the CTO over there, anytime. I'll just give you his cell phone number, and you can talk to him about the quality of our work. But you know, they were having a hard time with innovation and getting people with expertise in building that type of a software solution. So we brought them an engagement manager. It took us about 3 weeks to find that person. We built a Scrum team of 6 people around that engagement manager, which took another couple weeks, and then we started working. And 6 months later, we deployed a finished product, which we're now supporting. And the overall cost reduction was 35% below what he would have paid internally to build it. And that is assuming that he could have found the resources internally to build it, which in fact he couldn't. So if you just do a dollar for dollar cost comparison, he saved 35%, got it done faster, and most likely he wouldn't have even been able to do it internally at all because he just didn't have any people. So what I want to do is I want to show you kind of a cleaned up version of that solution that we built, and then also bring the engagement manager to that meeting so that you can meet that person. And I'd like to either do that here in my office in Mexico or do that in your office. How does that sound?
Sounds really interesting. Really does. So you said that you saved 35% of what they would have spent if they had funded this internally?
Yeah, if you take the cost per hour of engineering services, it was closer to 50%. But you're a smart guy, and you know that that's not accurate. You've got to add in, you know, things like engagement. I will call and send somebody down to Mexico for a week to do some training. We're going to bring some people up to your office up there in Salt Lake City for a week or two to maybe do the release. There's software licensing costs that you have to factor into this. Brian, I've been in this business for 20 years. I can where all the hidden costs are, and I can help you get through this with minimal risk. But yeah, at the end of the day, after all those costs were factored in, it was a 35% savings.
Huh, that's amazing. You mentioned the Agile and Scrum team. That's how we work. That's how we develop new products. How would we interact? Or is it you mentioned an engagement manager? Is that the person that we talk to, or what does that look like?
Yeah, you're going to get an engagement manager from us, regardless of who does the project management. So, if you have, I'm assuming you have project managers. If they've got any bandwidth, we would really like it if one of your project managers would oversee the project, working directly with our engagement manager every single day, every stand-up meeting. If you don't have available project management, which happens with some of our customers, then we have it. We have project managers that can do it as well. But either way, you're going to have a product owner on your side that's going to have to be fully involved with us, or this thing will fail.
Do these guys work directly with your teams?
Yours or ours?
Our product owners in our product management.
Yeah. They work directly with the team. We're operating as an extension of your team. So just imagine standing up a 5 to 10 person team in a building down the street in Salt Lake City that works directly with your team. It's the same thing. That's what we're going to be doing, but we'll be doing it from Mexico.
Hey, I'm going to go ahead and cut this short and talk about what's resonated with me so far.
I'm going to go back on mute.
Great, thanks, Mike. Obviously, there's a huge difference, and the sad part is the first scenario that we walk through, I would say anywhere from 7% of pitches that I've heard were more like that. The second scenario that we walked through really struck home with me for a lot of reasons. One, he started off with a lot of questions. The fact that he listened to the investor call, it's amazing how much Mike's candor and what they don't do well or don't do at all really generates trust within me. It made me really trust, okay, I'm going to get a very specific point of view here, and that's good to hear. The that he went with a smaller team, smaller engagement, a very personal style engagement, resonated because of the business that I work in. It resonated because Mike knew that through the questions that he'd asked to get to that point. On an immediate reference, it resonates. But the two things that stuck out to me, one, he mentioned time to market. So he clearly understood the world that I live in and knows that that was important. And the second thing, he mentioned cost, but he didn't talk about price per developer. He talked about cost in terms of overall delivery, which at the end of the day is what I care about. The fact that I could get a brand new team up and running quickly and do that at 35% of cost in the highly competitive market that we compete in, that to me is just such a win-win all the way around. And I think the last part where Mike actually puts me in the situation of, okay, this is what it would be like to work with that team. I can imagine that. I can imagine a team down the road in Salt Lake City of 5 to 10 people. That's not intimidating. That's not scary to me. And knowing that my guys are going to be working directly with them is really reassuring. So that second pitch would have me on the hook, and I'd be really interested in proceeding with an engagement there.
Yeah, if I could add just a couple more things before we wrap up the call. One is, we've got salespeople in our company. We have 5 full-time sales executives, and one of the new ones that we hired out of college said to us after about four months on the job, said, "Hey, is it normal for people to just never call you back and never answer your emails?" And it was an innocent question, but it was kind of funny because we had to tell her, actually these people are so busy that sometimes they can't even call their husband or wife back. So that's just the world we live in. Getting the pitch right sometimes is easier than actually getting the meeting in the first place. So one of the things we might want to do on the next NEA call, Rebecca, is talk about how to get the opportunity in the first place. And if you guys on the call agree with that, maybe send your comments to Rebecca so we can organize that. And then I had one other point too I wanted to make, which I thought was important, and I forgot it, so I'll leave it there.
Sure, Mike. And now that you mentioned that, I just got a question regarding something similar. So maybe we have the chance to answer it, maybe not, but but I just want to make sure we bring it up.
Yeah, let's answer some questions.
So what is the right time to send an email or try to arrange a meeting with an executive in the U.S.? So I think that's an interesting question.
So emails largely don't work very well unless you are being referred in or you know somebody that they know. So if you're going to do the email approach, mention somebody that they know that has a high regard for you, and that's going to work most of the time. And otherwise, your chance of getting an email responded to is very, very, very small. We have people that have sent hundreds of emails through LinkedIn, and they've never had a single response. So the approach has to be through referral or a story, even a warm referral. We worked with Joe Smith at that company, and you know that they know that person. As far as calls go, that's an interesting question. So people are so busy and so screened that what we do is we actually call. We actually have good success calling in the mornings before the screeners come in. So a lot of these hardworking, type A, CTOs, CIOs, vice presidents of engineering, call center delivery vice presidents, these people that you need to get on the phone with, call them at 7 in the morning. Call them at 7:30 in the morning. Oftentimes they'll pick up their own phone. That's what I would say about calling.
Thank you, Mike.
We've got 2 minutes left. Any other questions, Rebecca? Or?
I think maybe we can just let Terry do the takeaways, and if we have a little bit of time left, then we'll cover some questions.
Great. Well, we covered a lot of ground, I think, but the 4 main takeaways from the talk are: do your homework, conduct your research so that you understand the buyer and you can frame your pitch appropriately. make sure you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, focusing on their challenges, focusing on their goals, and not coming out of the gate talking about your own company. Bring fresh ideas to the table, because that might open up the opportunity for additional work, and focus on what makes you truly relevant and unique to the buyer.
And join the NEA. If anybody hasn't joined the NEA, go to nearshoreexecutives.com and please join.
Okay, let's see if there's. Well, I think we're right. Yes, right on time to wrap up the call. I have one question. God, do we have time for one quick question?
Yeah, we're all still on.
Okay, Agile is as a differentiator is not really a differentiator anymore. Is that something you agree with, or?
Yeah, for the most part, everybody's doing it now. So a couple of years ago, it was a differentiator and unique and new, but it's not. If a service provider, either IT or BPO, is not doing Agile, they're just way behind and out of it. They're not even relevant anymore.
I would say the differentiator, Rebecca, is in how it's done, because I see it done badly all over the place, and by badly I mean. Mike mentioned having our product owner and project manager interacting directly with their team. More often, what I see is their team runs Agile, we run Agile, and they're completely separate, and then we check in every once in a while. But we like it when teams actually do their morning stand-ups and the Agile ceremonies with us, as if they were physically in the same location.
Great, thank you, Brian. Anyone wants to do some final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up, or?
No, thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, again, thank you very much, Theresa, Brian, and Mike. This is very important for our nearshore community. This is, the number one challenge our providers are facing. So all of your insight and all of the valuable information you provided us today is definitely a great, a great value, is of a great value for nearshoring. So, thank you. And
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Tara.
Yes, and everyone will get a copy
everyone.
of the slides and the recording. You have a great rest of your day, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.